Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Gosh, I feel like I'm in lodge. Okay, so the title of my talk is Who is Performing Your Masonic Funeral? A look at the future from the future of Freemasonry. So, like he was mentioning, my name is Nicolas Harvey. I was made a Mason in St. John's Lodge in Boston, and I am a co-host on the Three Distinct Knocks podcast, which is available everywhere. And I'm also a perpetual guest on the After Lodge podcast. It's funny, when Brian reached out to me and he said, "Hey, do you want to give this talk?" And you'll notice if you've ever seen the Three Distinct Knocks podcast, I was like, do you want David Riley? Because I'm the one that asks all the dumb questions. He's the guy that does all the really smart stuff. But he's like, nope, he wanted me. So we'll see where this goes. So I was born and raised in Florida, and my job moved me up here for a year. And in that year, I did Blue Lodge, Scottish Rite, and York Rite. I went through my first snowstorm and learned what snow was. So then I said, back to the beach. So I left right after that, and I joined lodges in Florida. And I knew that something was just really different there. So I couldn't really put my finger on it. So I also, as well, like John did, I created a survey, and it reached not nearly as many people as his did. And it was more of a therapy type session at the end, and it was just, young guys, millennials, why don't you go to lodge anymore? Or if you're happy with your lodge, why? If you're not happy with your lodge, why? And some guys wrote 1 or 2 sentences, and some guys wrote books. And I've been reading that forever. I felt like it was just never going to end with all the responses. Before we get into that, I'll talk about what types of men we have in our lodge. We have guys that focus on charity. They're really into the charity of the lodge. We have guys that are really spiritual or esoteric. And we have guys that are fraternal. They're there just for the fraternal aspects of our fraternity. I believe the fraternity is big enough for everyone if we let each brother find what he wants and what he's looking for in the craft. I've noticed that there's a lot of guys that join our lodge that maybe didn't have friends growing up, or a lot of friends at least, and they look to Freemasonry to kind of give them a how-to instruction guide, which is nice because if a lodge provides that, and they learn that, then that helps them for the rest of their lives. We also have guys in the lodge that say no. And I think that's one of our biggest problems that we have, is that whatever kind of lodge you have, because most lodges have a majority of one of those types, there's always somebody that says, hey, I want to do this. And someone says, no, you can't do that, no. This reason or that reason. And then the guy's like, well, can I do this? And they're like, no. And then, well, can I? And then they just stop asking. And then they just stop coming to lodge. And then we're like, where did all our members go? So, and I've always said, let guys do what they want to do. If it's not breaking any of the rules of the lodge or the Grand Lodge, if it doesn't cost anything, or if he's willing to pay for it, and then what's the worry? If he does it, if it doesn't work, fine. But if it does work, it's like, cool. So I noticed, and the reason this survey started was online in various different places, Reddit, a bunch of the Facebook Masonic groups, and then as I've talked to guys in various lodges around the country, and guys who have wrote in from listening to the podcast, they weren't happy, and they weren't happy with their lodge. And I wanted to figure out why. So I sent this out. I began asking some questions about who they are and what they were looking for. And the types of men were men who kind of just wanted to escape the world. I mean, my generation, our generation, we live online. There's no color, we don't care what your sexual orientation is anymore. It's not a thing. We don't care if you're black, white, purple, orange, whatever. It's the internal that matters online because you only read what the person says. So you bypass all that and you really get to know about the person. There's a speaker named Simon Sinek. He has a quote that he says that my generation, the millennials, grew up subject to failed parenting strategies. And he says that's our words. I don't know where he got that. So now we have a generation of guys who don't know how to do life. So when they join a lodge and they make friends with these older guys, in a way they're like, can you kind of help me learn how to taxes, wife stuff? And that's, I think, a great thing that the lodge could provide. They want a non-dogmatic, they're not political, and they're not 100% Democrat or Republican. It goes back to what's just the right answer? And we see this in the data, and if anybody's interested in the data, I could scrub it if you want to sanitize it and then yell at me about it later. But what are they looking for? They're looking for a spiritual experience. They have non-traditional approaches to religion. Another way to say it is, don't tell them what to believe. They want a place where their questions are valued, sincere inquiries. And an amazing story I have with that is I was sitting at a table somewhere a couple years ago, and it just so happened there was 8 or 9 guys, and it just so happens we're a bunch of different flavors of religion. And one guy goes, "Can I ask a really stupid question?" And I don't remember what it was, but it was something like, "Why do Jewish people wear yarmulkes?" or something like that. And the Jewish guy was like, "Oh, well, I could tell you about that." And then it started like this 3-hour discussion of like, well, you're Muslim. Why do you guys do this? And then it's like, oh, I didn't know that. And then it was like, well, you're Christian. Like, why do you guys believe this? And I think that's one of the amazing things is that we're curious and don't shove it down our throats, but we do want to learn. We want a genuine initiatory experience, and a lot of guys want to connect to what we like to refer to as the ancient mysteries, going back to the basics. They want to leave the internet and the cell phones and all this stuff, and they say, I need to reconnect and figure things out. So the survey, it hit 15 countries and 50 states and about 600 people, which I know is very minimal, but it did show a lot of trends, especially when you look and map it around to the different places. And like I said, the last box was very much like a therapy session, and a lot of guys like really unloaded. And after you read them all, you could break it down into 3 categories of what these people were looking for. The first was the experience. And a lot of guys said, we Google things when we want to learn about something. And they said, I Google, Masonic Lodge wherever I live, and it's a website that hasn't been updated in 10 years. And it says, contact Grandpa Pat 1961 at AOL.com. And he goes, and I never heard back, so I didn't know what to do, so I kept emailing him, and I don't know what to say. And then they go to a lodge, and we say, don't Google anything. It's like, well, you wouldn't buy a car if the sales guy said, don't Google anything about this car. You're going to love it, though. You're going to love it. And so we have to be prepared for that. We have a fraternity that I'm really proud of and I really love. And there's a lot of really cool stuff that we could tell guys and be like, we came from this is what we did. So they don't need to Google in order to be satisfied with what they're possibly thinking about joining. They go on to say that they come for months in suits. Depending on where you live, dinner is either before lodge or after lodge. In a lot of places where it's before lodge, guys are running from work, run to lodge, sat in rush hour, They wore a suit, they're scarfing food down, saying hi to their friends, and then it's like, okay, into the lodge room, blah, 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 this and that. All right, all non-Master Masons have to leave. And they're like, why did I do that? I didn't get to know anybody. It felt weird. I didn't know if my suit fit because I don't really wear one all the time. And guys were all kind of in their little cliques. And again, this is all what the data said multiple times from various parts of the United States and in some aspects around the world to the other countries. And one of the ways we could fix that is I've seen a few lodges, and I know that some people are going to say, well, duh. But there's a guy that says, if you're a guest, I am locking onto you. I'm going to introduce you to every single person. You are going to be by my side the entire night. And it's like, oh yeah, hey, it's Bob. Hey, oh, you're an architect. Oh, Steve over there is an architect. Let me introduce you. And they start chatting, and you just kind of help them. Because otherwise it's like a game of double dutch where they're not sure where they could jump into the conversation. It's like really weird. So if you just help them with that, it helps them get more comfortable with the situation. There's a Masonic term where we say we meet on the level. And I believe it was Jason Mitchell out of Utah that said this, but I'm not 100% sure. But he goes, on the level doesn't mean we all meet down here. It means we all bring each other up here. This is where the level is for each other. This is the standard we need to set ourselves to. It's not going down here to the minimum. And I think that's true, and I think that's amazing when you think about what we can do to everybody who comes in our lodge, even a visitor who we'll never see again, because it'll stick with him. So they go through the degrees, and it's life-changing, seriously. Whatever they're going through in life, whatever they're looking for, when they go through the degree, they come out different. But then in a lot of lodges, the data suggests, in a lot of lodges, they only open up in the Master Mason degree. So then these guys, and I know, shaking your head, man, I know it. They only open up in the Master Mason degree, which means this guy can't come to lodge for 3, 6, 8 months. And he's like, so what did I join? And it was interesting. There was a few responses that said, were you guys scared of me finding out what you did in your meetings, which is why you didn't let me go till after I went through the degrees? And that can mean a few different things to you, but if you think about what your lodge does during a regular meeting, it's like, well, maybe we kind of showed you this, but it was actually that. Something I really love is that I heard a story that Amicable Lodge in Cambridge, when the candidates are about to go through the degree and get prepared, there's a guy or two outside the door. No one's allowed in the room. No one's allowed to talk to the candidates. No goat jokes, which I hope just die. You can't, yeah, amen, brother. You can't harass them. You can't say, oh, this and that. No, they're outside the door and nobody could talk to them and no one's getting in there, not even the master. Just whoever's preparing them, and that's it. They go through the degree, and there was a lot of responses of guys saying, why was everybody like shouting out corrections? They're like, thou, not thee, or no, you missed a part. And it's, the candidates won't know. And it was funny because I was actually seeing a degree a couple weeks ago, and the worshipful master just completely forgot about a really big part, just absolutely missed it. And he had said before the meeting, and I believe there's another lodge in Massachusetts that does this, nobody talks when the candidate is in the room. You don't move. You don't look down at your lap because I know you're on your phone. You are focused on the candidate because he is the most important thing in the universe at that very moment. And when that comes time and he looks and he sees us, he knows that we're focused on him. We only need an hour, right? We're not asking you for everything. So, and he sees that and he feels that. And he goes, if we mess up, we mess up. We'll deal with it later. And I know one person who did not listen to the worshipful master, and the worshipful master paused and had the brother escorted out. And then they continued with it, and yeah, after that happens the first time, nobody does it anymore. So once they're raised, so they go through these 3 degrees, and the degrees are amazing, life-changing. They start going to meetings, and they've all said the same thing. What happened to the education? I just learned all this stuff. Can I learn more about it? It's like, well, no, sorry, you can't. We're voting on changing the lights. We're thinking about LED. It's going to cost us $30, but we're going to argue about it for 2 hours. You think we're kidding. So then the guys are like, why am I going to lodge meetings? So if you provide good Masonic education that really keeps them informed, I have a lot of examples that we'll go through, although I'm missing something that was up here. Thank you. Why'd you take my magazine? That's how good it is. People steal it. So we can't. So then the guys say, "Oh, I have a cable toe. I have to stop coming to lodge. I got this and I got that." And very few times have I really grilled a brother and said, "Do you really what's really your cable toe?" And he's like, "To be honest, I'm just wasting my time. I just kind of want to be with my wife or go do something else." So if we think about that and we start talking to our members, we can figure out why they joined and what they're looking for. And if we don't have it, be like, we're not the sociable lodge. We're more of the educational, but lodge whatever down the street, you really want them because they do social events all the time. Such a pet peeve of mine. On the topic of buildings, of course not this one, but in so many lodge rooms that I've been in around the country, they're all the same. And they have the wood paneling going halfway up the wall. Don't know who did that, but it was in 1960. And we're like, let's just keep that. Although it might be just because I was spoiled. I was raised in the Grand Lodge of Massachusetts in Corinthian room. So if you guys ever seen that, yeah, it's yeah. I had it pretty good. We built these beautiful temples during a time when our brothers thought the craft was so important, they reached into their own pocket and said, yes, absolutely. But the wood walls, the 20 pictures of George Washington, the chairs, which are interesting, we're actually, this is a little bit off topic, but we're actually doing a research into, were the chairs made when America was a lot less overweight? Is that why they're so skinny and everyone's like this? Because we're curious about that. It's just get rid of it. And if you don't think your lodge has the funds, I have a really interesting story about the Cambridge Masonic Temple. So the Cambridge Masonic Temple did a fundraiser, and they raised $37,000 from individuals in 7 months. Normal people, just regular guys. Excuse me. And it was all either $500 or $1,000 increments. And from Ernesto Fernandez, who is right there. If you have any questions, please reach out and ask him. He goes, I noticed that everyone seemed to want the same thing. The problem was that every time anyone suggested it, there was a million obstacles people would start rattling off, and then it would always end in, there's no money. No one would give us money to do that. And when they did, they were only talking a few dollars. He noticed the lack of ambition, the lack of trust and confidence, but he also noticed that there was a common goal. So he goes, right off the bat, I knew this was about culture change, not raising money. You need to have a community that's ready to trust and ready to hope. It sounds corny, but it's true. And that involves sticking your neck out and being the voice of unrelenting, almost aggressive optimism. He goes, set a short time frame, no more than 10 months, but less would work too. He goes, make it easy. All but one has written a check outright or subscribed to automatic monthly payments. I know, it's crazy. You don't have to write a check. It changes. Articulate a vision and make it very participatory. Even if you have a strong leadership, which he didn't feel they did, you want to give people a chance to be heard. Take them seriously and keep them informed. they're giving you their money and trusting you not to break their hearts. So like any relationship, the key is communication. I know that's like a crazy, but it's true. He goes, start with the easiest, sexiest project possible and ignore the guys who say there's more important stuff to do. Yeah, there is. But you know what? Let them do that if that's what they're focused on. You want to do what you can do. And he goes, recognize people publicly, award participation, be silent on non-participation. Throw a social media parade for every guy who pledges the minimum amount and make sure their name is going somewhere and insist it is important, even if they try to be modest. They want their name on the wall and it's your job to put it there for them. Write them nice letters that re-articulate the importance of their participation and the vision for their project. Have a small committee, no more of 3 people that are reliable, likable, and leaders. Not everyone has to be all 3, but you're going to need your guy that's going to get it done, your guy that doesn't want to disappoint anybody, and your guy that everyone likes and gets people excited. So following that, you guys may be able to start raising money, and you'll see, just like he did, because a lot of people that I heard were like, no, we're not going to raise any money. $37,000 is nothing to laugh. That is serious change that's being made. And I believe the money's still coming in, correct? People are still donating towards it.
Yeah, it's slowed down, we have a limited size, like we only have a certain, we only have so much of a base, so we pretty much have most people, but people are still coming in. You have your last minute people always.
Awesome. Yeah, and then the second thing that everybody, if you take all the results and read them and kind of categorize what they were talking about, is education, which we hear it all the time. But lodges still aren't doing it. And they want more than the rules. Yes, the Grand Lodge rules are important and we need to know them. But that's not what the guys are there for. They want to reconnect with the things they learned in the degree. They want it to be more than 5 minutes. Craziness, I know. And they don't want it to be about George Washington. I always make the joke that if some crazy people decide to make me most worshipful of wherever I am, I will ban George Washington from ever being spoken about in a lodge for the entire state. Not even kidding. Because we always talk about him, but your lodge has really amazing people too. We've actually gone through in my mother lodge, and we've gone through the old minutes, and we've started Googling names, and we're like, whoa, this guy, and like, this is amazing. And when you read the old minutes, and you're like, one of the things we did was we looked after the world events, some of them, and we tried to find the closest meeting to it and see what the guys talked about. Did they pass the hat? Did they want to do a charitable project after that? And it was really interesting to see the results, or see the minutes and what they said after those parts. If you're looking for things to read in lodge, there's a lot of guys who want to start doing Masonic education for their lodge that have reached out to me and said, oh my gosh, my worshipful master he's going to let me do education. I don't know what to do though. He goes, but now I understand why we always talked about the same things. And I go, okay, there's a Grand Lodge of Scotland Facebook page. If you guys don't like or follow it, make sure you do. They post really fascinating history on there. I know, right? Do it right now. At least wait till I'm done. There's a book called Short Talks on Masonry by Joseph Fort Newton. It's out of print, I believe, but it's available on Amazon for like $20-25. And it's different chapters that are 10 to 15 minutes long about various parts of the lodge and our history. There's a book titled The Mason's Word, The History and Evolution of American Masonic Ritual by Robert G. Davis, 33rd degree Grand Cross out of Guthrie, Oklahoma, who I consider a friend, and he's awesome. And like I said, you could use your lodge member history. The magazine that was stolen out of here is the Fraternal Review out of the Southern California Research Lodge. So $25 a year gets you it PDF in your inbox, I think 10 months out of the year, and $35 you get it printed. And it has various books people are reading, different Masonic articles, different events going on. This is actually their trestle board, although that's kind of cheating, and things you could Google, things you could see on YouTube, and they're very quick to go through and say, oh, this is about this, and just read it, pass it around to the guys, leave it in lodge. And they're also downstairs if you guys wanted to sign up, and I really, really hope you do, because it is fantastic. We just added to it. There's now 50 Masonic podcasts out there. Yeah, I know. The craziest one, and we have a list that I'll publish somewhere. The craziest one I found was, I think, Prince Hall Shriners. Yeah, not a one I would have found. And they all have different topics, and they all have different flavors, like Baskin-Robbins ice cream, and everyone subscribes to one or two that they like. But you can always listen to them and then take little parts out and just read it in your lodge or make everybody listen to it. There's a fantastic podcast called Three Distinct Knocks. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it. I do a lot of listening on there. David Riley does all the talking. And then the last thing everybody wanted was fellowship. The same reason that our parents told us not to take the first date to the movies, right? Because you can't get to know somebody at the movies. You have to be quiet. Well, that's just like lodge. I mean, you talk for a few minutes, go into lodge or go into the movies, and then you're like 2 hours later, you're like, all right, well, I'm exhausted, so I'm going home, and so are you. So there's a podcast called the After Lodge Podcast, and it's really bizarre. It's basically Seinfeld. It's a podcast about nothing. There's no direction. There's no topics. We just talk about whatever's going on. And we get thousands of listeners a month. And people are like, your podcast is exactly what I wanted my lodge experience to be like. And to be honest, we don't really get it. It's awesome. We're super happy. But they're like, I just want to go to lodge and do nothing and just hang out with the guys and just have a conversation. Don't make it a cleanup event. Don't make it a community event. Just be like, guys, on Friday, I'm going to have some pizza and soda at the lodge if anybody wants to hang out. I'm going to bring some Dominoes, whatever. And the people that have tried this, every single one of them have always gotten back to me and said, the first couple times I did it, nobody showed up. But after 2 or 3 or 4 times, now it's a thing. Everybody goes to this. We got guys that go to this that don't go to lodge. And he goes, this is what I was looking for, just fellowship, just chit-chatting, bring a deck of cards, whatever you want to talk about. And they say it works, and they're still doing it. David Riley has a quote where he says, we need to stop trying to buy the love of the profane world, which means we need to stop giving charity outside our lodge to this charity or that charity. We could use that money for ourselves, to cushion ourselves first and foremost. We could use that money to have a fancy dinner and promote guys who Mason of the Year for our lodge, or just hang out and do nothing. It's what these guys, and I could show you, I don't have a PowerPoint, but if I did, I could show you over and over and over and over where everybody from all different parts of the United States, from around the world, are like, I just want to hang out with my guys. Like, that's all. Something really interesting is a lot of lodges have been scheduling events at gun ranges recently. And it seems to be a really big hit for whatever reason, but okay. But they all say, hey, Saturday we're going to go to this gun range and we're just going to use a bunch of guns. And I was like, wow, that's the manliest thing I could think of. So yeah, that makes total sense why it's working. So one of the things lodges can do is, of course, update your website, because you have to meet my generation where we are. If you're in your lodge and the guys are saying, well, if they're not going to come and do the way we do it, oh well. That's right. I'll meet you halfway, but you have to meet me halfway as well. So have somebody in the lodge redo your website. If you don't have anybody, contact me and I'll redo it for you. It won't be like the Sistine Chapel, but it'll be okay. Create a shared calendar So Google Calendar has this where you could share it out, and wherever your secretary or whoever's in charge of events updates it, it automatically updates it for everybody. And they go, okay, this is my monthly schedule. So they don't have to wait for the trestle board and then the date changed and they didn't write down lodge or they accidentally threw it away. They're like, go to the calendar, it's always up to date. Create a private Facebook group. This is something else that I've seen a growing trend on in the last couple years, is just create a private Facebook group where just the members of your lodge. I think in South America they do WhatsApp groups, which is more, they use that more there. But in here we would do like a Facebook group and just make it private, members only. And from what I've seen and what people have told me, 99% of the postings are just BS of just a meme or some joke that somebody heard or whatever. But it promotes communication and it promotes fellowship with everybody. Somebody could say, hey guys, don't forget Brother Smith is going through his entered apprentice degree tonight. And if I'm by my lodge, I'm like, oh crap, yeah, I got to go to that. Or it's like, hey, brother so-and-so is in the hospital. He's at this hospital in this room. Something also interesting is a lot of guys say happy birthday to the Masons in that group. And what ends up happening is people just write happy birthday. So you go in there and you're like, wow, all these people wish me happy birthday. That's really cool. And again, it only takes 2 seconds to do it. You could also create a Facebook page to let everybody in your district know, hey, these are the events going on. And again, just be at the forefront of where my generation is online. And just find somebody who wants to do it, because I guarantee you, if there's a young guy in your lodge and you ask him, he will say, yes, absolutely, I will do this. And if not, let me know and I will do it for you. Because, excuse me. David Riley has a quote. I know I always quote him all the time, but if you're a member of Amicable, you probably quote David Riley all the time too. He goes, for too long, we've been eating fruit from trees we did not plant and drinking water from wells we did not dig. And if we don't start digging and planting, we're going to soon be both very hungry and very thirsty. And I think that means that everything we do, we have to act like it matters, because it does matter. Everything we do matters. And we need to make it the best experience we can for each other. And maybe that'll start bringing guys to lodge, keep them in lodge, and keep them around. So I do love our fraternity, as much as it sounded very negative. I do love it. I love going to lodge. I love meeting brothers and talking to brothers literally around the world all the time. And I hope that everyone understands that even though there is a downward decline of Masons, we're not dying. We're going to be okay. We just need to start. It's our turn. The older generation needs to pass the baton and let us start doing things. Thank you. So.